The story starts with our protagonist sitting at his computer, staring at all the hot MILFs in the game he's playing. He is fascinated with the hot moms with jumbo-sized melons than the main heroines. But in the game, something terrible always happens, and the protagonist finds it awful. The cute moms always die. His phone buzzes with a text from the game developers. Excited, he rushes to check it, thinking his request to create a route saving all the hot moms has been accepted. But he's horribly disappointed when he realizes it's just a new event added to the game. The protagonist is your average corporate zombie whose only hobby is playing an adult browser game called 𝓜𝓘𝓛𝓕. The heroines are cute, each with distinct personalities, but what really stands out to the protagonist is the awesome cast of freaky moms. But in the end, these moms are just side characters with terrible endings. Most of them get brutally murdered or poisoned by villains while protecting the hero of the game. The hero of the game, Ray, risks his life protecting the heroines, while the moms are left to die like Thanksgiving chickens. A lot of gamers have sent countless requests day and night, asking for a different storyline where the moms stay alive, particularly our protagonist. But so far, all their pleas have been ignored. Thinking deeply, our boy wishes if he were the protagonist, he'd do everything in his power to protect every mom in the game. After finishing the game that day, he finally decides to head to work. But while climbing down the stairs, his foot slips, he falls, hugging the hard cement floor and dying on the spot. But instead of going to hell like every sinner, the mofo wakes up in a Western-style bedroom and feels like he's seen it somewhere before. Looking around, the young man notices a familiar portrait hanging on the wall. Shocked, he realizes he has somehow reincarnated inside his favorite game world. Just then, a gorgeous MILF bursts into the room, calling him Demonio and asking if he's all right since she heard him scream. Shocked, the protagonist recognizes her immediately. She's Rosa, one of the MILFsters in the game. This is all the confirmation he needs that he's actually inside the game. Excited by this, the protagonist thinks about how awesome it is to have wandered into the world of the game he's been playing. His eyes accidentally move to the mirror, and he realizes something shocking. His face isn't his own, but actually belongs to Demonio. He screams at this shocking revelation, because Demonio is the last character in the game he ever wants to be. The character Demonio is your average villainous aristocrat. He has first-rate magic skills according to the game's story, but the dude is an arrogant and callous piece of filth. Since the hero of the story was a commoner, Demonio became a thorn in his side and picked a fight with him. But the hero swiftly defeated him. After that, Demonio spiraled out of control like a maniac until he met a grisly death because of his evil actions. No matter the route, Demonio always meets the same terrible fate. With this in mind, the protagonist panics, wondering what he'll do now. He's finally come to the world of 𝓜𝓘𝓛𝓕, but it seems like he's already damned with a terrible ending. Rosa notices Demonio looking pale, approaches him, and asks if he's all right. Startled by how close she is, Demonio looks up and, seeing those two heavy dumplings on her chest, finds it oddly soothing. It's revealed that Rosa is Demonio's stepmother in the game, and she's super popular. Following that, Rosa apologizes for barging in without knocking, saying she was just worried after hearing him scream. Observing the situation, Demonio realizes something is wrong. Rosa looks frightened, and just then he sports a fresh scar on her face. Noticing him staring at the bloody mark, Rosa nervously brushes it off, saying she's completely to blame for what happened. As she speaks, strange memories of Demonio's brutality toward Rosa flood the protagonist's mind. He recalls that, according to the plot, Demonio lost his beloved mother when he was young. Maybe as a way to cope with his loss, he hated Rosa, his stepmother. Regardless, Rosa kept showing her love to Demonio as his mother. Even in the final battle between the protagonist and Demonio, Rosa had risked her life trying to protect her troublesome stepson despite his cruelty toward her, only to be stabbed in the back by the very scum she was trying to protect. That was the sad ending Rosa met in the original 𝓜𝓘𝓛𝓕 game. The protagonist finds Demonio's attitude disgusting and strongly apologizes to Rosa for everything the idiot had done. He claims Demonio did all that just to get close to her and was going through a rebellious phase, something normal for growing children. Rosa looks surprised when the reincarnated Demonio calls her mom for the first time. The young mom bursts into tears of joy and says she's so happy. She hugs him tightly, pressing her bazookas against his chest, and says she's delighted he acknowledges her as his mom. The size of her heavenly melons nearly gives Demonio a cardiac arrest. After the intense hug, Rosa asks him to call her mom a lot from now on. With a reassuring smile, she says she always understood and had known he was a nice boy all along. She asks that they take it slow since there's no need to rush things. With that, she leaves the room, promising to see him soon. Alone again, our boy reflects on what just happened. He thinks about how incredibly cute Rosa is and hates the fact that such an adorable mom like her would die without ever being acknowledged for her kind soul. Suddenly, a realization hits him hard. Since it was 𝓜𝓘𝓛𝓕 who brutally ended Rosa's life in the game, he vows to try everything to stop her from dying. Not just her, the protagonist declares with fierce determination that he will save all the hot moms who never had routes and change their terrible fates with his own hands. In this game world of Mamafan, where the hero only cares about saving the heroines, 𝓜𝓘𝓛𝓕 vows to save the sub-heroines who fall under the protagonist's radar. But to save the moms from their fates, he needs incredible strength. He does pull-ups using a tree branch, thinking to himself that he needs power strong enough to defeat even the toughest foes. He wants power that will help him change the story's trajectory. Though the real 𝓜𝓘𝓛𝓕 was a downright jerk, his magical talent was undeniable. And as a high-ranking noble, 𝓜𝓘𝓛𝓕 got both money and influence. Over the weeks, the protagonist trains harder than ever before. He reasons that if he trains like his life depends on it, he'll become strong enough to protect everyone he cares about. While the 𝓜𝓘𝓛𝓕 protagonist saves the main heroines, he focuses on his own important mission, saving all the sizzling hot moms of this game world from their terrible fates. Suddenly, a massive wild bear attacks with a terrifying roar. The creature is much bigger than what had been reported, and the kingdom's peacekeeping unit doesn't stand a chance against such a beast. But 𝓜𝓘𝓛𝓕 orders everyone to stand back immediately as he faces the enormous monster. He casts his intermediate spell, Black Dance, with incredible precision, striking the wild bear with devastating force. Peacekeeping unit watches nervously as Lord 𝓜𝓘𝓛𝓕 defeats the beast, praising the young master for personally coming to subdue such a threat. But 𝓜𝓘𝓘𝓕 just wants to finish quickly so he can return home. He's eager to go back and have Rosa praise him. It's been 3 months since he reincarnated as 𝓜𝓘𝓛𝓕, and everyone's noticed he's been acting differently lately. In the past, 𝓜𝓘𝓘𝓛𝓕 treated his servants worse than cattle, showing no respect. But now the maids gossip about how much he's changed for the better. He's even subdued a dangerous beast, and they feel he's become a respectable man. With the current head of the house, Glenn, frequently absent, 𝓜𝓘𝓛𝓕 now handles most of the household duties. Today, they have important business to discuss, a valuable contract, and Rosa is present as they review the paperwork together. After everything, 𝓜𝓘𝓛𝓕 politely asks her to put the important documents in the safe. Just as she's about to leave, an older man with a sinister smile stops her. He questions whether it's right for 𝓜𝓘𝓛𝓕 to hand over such an important contract to Rosa, speculating she might run off with his fortune. The vile old geezer warns 𝓜𝓘𝓛𝓕 that Rosa might seduce him with her big, fat 𝓜𝓘𝓛𝓕. Another man joins, saying they'd like to see her try those seductive skills on them. As they speak, Rosa grows tense at the obvious disrespect being shown toward her. The narrative reveals Rosa's tragic backstory. She comes from a fallen noble family that became very poor. After becoming the second wife of the Glenn family, she faced constant humiliation. She was insulted and called a gold digger nonstop. All this mistreatment took a serious toll, and the person who paved the way for her contempt was none other than 𝓜𝓘𝓛𝓕. Suddenly, our protagonist has heard enough of the disrespectful comments. He slams his fist on the table and calls the old man a ball-less creep for insulting Rosa. The young man declares that none of them have any right to disrespect his beloved stepmother. Shocked, the men watch in confusion as 𝓜𝓘𝓛𝓕 defends Rosa with fierce determination and even calls her mom. 𝓜𝓘𝓘𝓕 angrily tells them they don't deserve their necks for disrespecting his mom in his presence. Suddenly, 𝓜𝓘𝓘𝓕's magical power erupts. The men scream in terror as dark energy swirls menacingly around them. But showing mercy, 𝓜𝓘𝓘𝓕 orders them to get out of his sight immediately. The men panic and flee from the terrifying display of power, questioning what's happening since Lord 𝓜𝓘𝓘𝓕 was supposed to hate Rosa. With the men gone, Rosa gently scolds 𝓜𝓘𝓘𝓕 for losing his temper so dramatically. She tells him he shouldn't get so emotional as head of the house. 𝓜𝓘𝓘𝓕 apologizes, saying he got angry seeing them disrespect her. Rosa then reaches out and hugs him tightly with motherly affection. She calls him a bad boy and asks what he wanted to achieve by making her happy. 𝓜𝓘𝓘𝓕's heart nearly rips out. With his head resting on her cushions, 𝓜𝓘𝓘𝓕 reflects on how he's on very good terms with his stepmother and wishes he could flirt with her for the rest of his life. But beyond that, his duty is to save all the moms of this world, and he needs even more power to do that. Before the main quest at the end, which will lead to 𝓜𝓘𝓘𝓕's death, the protagonist recalls there's a side quest available. It involves obtaining the Glenn family treasure, which contains a very rare weapon. However, since it wouldn't affect the main story much according to the game, the protagonist is determined to do everything possible to get his hands on this powerful artifact. He knows that to save Rosa and all the other moms, he needs every advantage he can get. Next day, 𝓜𝓘𝓛𝓕 explores the hidden dungeon in search of the rare weapon. First, he turns right, then left through the stone passages. Suddenly, he encounters gargoyle-like statues blocking his path and carefully moves them out of the way. The protagonist has the dungeon's path memorized from countless playthroughs, so he makes sure to pick only the routes leading to the deepest level while avoiding monsters. Eventually, he reaches the final gate and approaches the entrance. Everything looks exactly as he remembers from the game. Stepping inside, 𝓜𝓘𝓛𝓕 finds himself in a massive chamber with chains stretched across the ceiling in every direction. Then his eyes fall upon the legendary weapon, the demon's sword 𝓜𝓘𝓛𝓕, said to exponentially strengthen dark magic. Despite being incredibly rare, the sword was practically useless in the original game. But now, gripping the blade tightly, 𝓜𝓘𝓛𝓕 declares with satisfaction that the sword will be perfect for his mission. Suddenly, massive tentacles burst from the shadows around him. A terrifying guardian emerges to protect the ancient weapon, its mouth wide open, revealing rows of sharp teeth. 𝓜𝓘𝓛𝓕 instantly recognizes the fierce monster. According to his game knowledge, once you take 𝓜𝓘𝓛𝓕, the guardian appears immediately to challenge intruders. But 𝓜𝓘𝓛𝓕 remains calm, knowing all the beast's attack patterns. Suddenly, the monster lashes out with powerful tentacles, but 𝓜𝓘𝓛𝓕 evades the attack. He smiles, saying that was a close call, thinking that if his shadow barrier had been even a second slower, he'd be seeing Heaven's Gate. This proves that game knowledge alone doesn't guarantee success. However, he's already vowed to protect the moms, and now he needs to make good on that promise. Charges at the monster, knowing the guardian's skin is naturally incredibly tough, making it highly resistant to both magical and physical attacks. Even worse, his attacks barely reach the hanging creature. In the game, 𝓜𝓘𝓛𝓕 has a strong aptitude for black magic and is highly skilled at spells that control shadows. Though the guy is vicious and arrogant, his magic manipulation skills are exceptional. With this in mind, 𝓜𝓘𝓛𝓕 waits patiently as the guardian finishes its tentacle attack. Just as the creature opens its mouth to spit deadly toxins, he realizes this is his only chance to strike. With 𝓜𝓘𝓛𝓕 in hand, 𝓜𝓘𝓛𝓕 declares he will release all his magical power. He shouts "pinpoint" while pointing the sword at the monster with deadly precision. The compressed mana from the blade forms a narrow strip and hits the monster's mouth. Suddenly, the guardian's eye explodes in a burst of light, and the monster collapses in defeat. Sole weakness of the treasure guardian has always been the eye inside its gaping mouth. 𝓜𝓘𝓛𝓕 owes 𝓜𝓘𝓛𝓕 for taking out the monster so easily. Not only did he get his hands on such a powerful weapon, he also cleared the dangerous dungeon without major problems. Excited, he calls out to his beloved moms, shouting with pure joy, asking them to wait for him. But just then, something unexpected happens in the dungeon chamber. A mysterious, pretty blonde girl appears, laughing softly as she watches. She reveals her seal has just been broken, and her new master is apparently just a mama's boy. Shocked, 𝓜𝓘𝓛𝓕 stares at the beautiful stranger in confusion, wondering who the heck she is. After clearing the dangerous dungeon, 𝓜𝓘𝓛𝓕 returns home with the blade, 𝓜𝓘𝓛𝓕. Though thrilled to have acquired it without serious injury, he certainly didn't expect the mysterious blonde to follow him. After a long day, 𝓜𝓘𝓛𝓕 heads to the bathroom for a shower. But when he opens the door, he catches Rosa inside, with her rice cakes in full HD display, which catches him off guard. Later, during lunch, 𝓜𝓘𝓛𝓕 apologizes for the embarrassing encounter with his stepmother. Rosa brushes it off, insisting it's not his fault but hers for not locking the door. She also apologizes for showing him her stretch-marked body, insisting she's not worth looking at as an old lady. However, 𝓜𝓘𝓛𝓕 finds her incredibly adorable and thinks she's acting all self-deprecating because she clearly wants him to deny that every part of her is precious, and he loves it. So 𝓜𝓘𝓛𝓕 assures her she's far from an old lady and hotter than any average baddie. Rosa finds his riz impressive, saying he's quite the smooth talker. Looking at the table, Rosa notices the magnificent sword and asks about the incredible weapon 𝓜𝓘𝓛𝓕 has brought home. Before he can respond, she says it's hard to believe he cleared the dungeon all by himself. Reflecting, Rosa reveals that according to ancient stories, no one could wield this legendary sword because its power was unbelievably strong. As a result, the head of the 𝓜𝓘𝓛𝓕 family, generations ago, had to seal it away. 𝓜𝓘𝓛𝓕 agrees, noting her explanation matches exactly what he already knew from the game. But Rosa then warns him to be very careful. She shares that, according to fables, a demon resides within the sword. She adds that this demon has a will of its own and brings ruin to any master it hates. At night in the woods, a dark supernatural presence follows 𝓜𝓘𝓛𝓕. It's the demon blonde from earlier, emerging from 𝓜𝓘𝓛𝓕 with a gluttonous smile as she munches away. Demonio is still shocked by her presence since she didn't exist in the original game. But then he recalls vaguely reading about a cursed soul dwelling within the blade in some reference materials. Turning to the demon girl, Demonio asks her name. She replies she has no proper name and tells him to call her whatever he wishes. And Demonio suggests Pina, a shortened version of Despina. She agrees cheerfully. Following that, Pina then reveals it's her first time outside in ages. She calls Demonio a mama's boy master and asks him to do his best to entertain her. But then she warns with dangerous intent that if he bores her, she'll curse him to death. Demonio quickly denies being a mama's boy, but Pina disagrees, saying he definitely has mother complex issues and is crazy about moms. Still, Demonio insists his love for moms isn't pathetic or a mother complex and claims he's simply redeeming quality. When Pina notices him staring at a mask and asks what he's messing with, Demonio replies it's high time he starts taking action behind the scenes. Looking toward the future, Demonio explains that since it's mandatory in this world to attend the Magic Academy to become a noble, he'll need to get in. That way, he can meet plenty of hot mamas before the main story begins. Suddenly, his expression turns deadly serious as he remembers there's one MILF who's an exception. If he doesn't save her before the main story starts, it'll be impossible later. This game mom is the smoking hot MILF your dad warned you about, and Demonio vows to rescue her from the worst route, where she gets trained into complete submission by evil forces. This curvy mom is Maniana Velheaven, a magical swordswoman known by the peculiar moniker, the Witch of Thunder. She's one of the heroines in Mamafin and the mother of a game character named Monica. What's more, she's a former S-rank adventurer and one of the strongest pillars of the Royal Knight Order. In the game's story, her husband passed away, leaving her to live with her only daughter, Monica. They're guest characters who appear occasionally during gameplay. Despite her limited screen time originally, Maniana quickly became super popular with fans. However, she suddenly disappears mid-game without a trace. Meanwhile, in an unfinished building, 4 rough-faced bandits comment on Maniana's incredible assets, fantasizing aloud about getting a piece of her plot. As the goons discuss their crude desires, Pina spies on them from a nearby rooftop. She quickly rushes to find Demonio, who's close by, and reports everything she's seen. Demonio, pleased with her usefulness, praises her, making the demonic lowly beam cheerfully. After the past few days, Demonio realizes that Pina is only visible to him. Deciding there's no harm in trusting her, he shares his past life and game knowledge to gain her full cooperation in achieving his goals. After ghosting through most of the mid-game, Maniana finally reappears near the end. To the protagonist's horror, she's already been broken and trained into submission by the evil rascals. Fully turned against her own side, the protagonist has no choice but to defeat her. As Maniana takes her last breath, she comes to her senses and apologizes to her daughter for being a terrible mom. After Monica tragically loses her mother, the protagonist, Ray, comforts her, and together they move on to the next boss stage. Such an awful ending for Mama Mania once broke the protagonist in the past. He anguished over the loss, desperately wishing for a route where she survives. Even though the dark twist turned him on in a weird way, he still found it unforgivable. He begged the game creators for days to add a path where Maniana is saved, but all his pleas were ignored. Back in the present, Demonio sees this as the perfect moment to strike, before the main story even begins. As they head to the bandits' hideout, Pina asks Demonio about the lame mask he's wearing. Demonio explains it's to hide his identity and that he plans to save Maniana quietly without saying a word. Pina is surprised but shrugs it off, saying it's fine. When Demonio arrives at the bandits' hideout, he spots the 4 goons Pina had warned him about. Without wasting a second, he unleashes his devastating dark magic spell, Black Slave. The bandits scream in terror as they suddenly find themselves frozen, paralyzed by the mysterious power. Demonio wastes no time. He moves swiftly among them and with a single, precise strike, slashes their necks. Pina watches with keen interest, impressed by his magical skill. She compliments him on how strong he is, but Demonio, trying to stay modest, brushes it off, saying they were just weak lackeys, nothing special. Meanwhile, deep in an underground facility, an eye-patched crook prepares to work on Maniana. Maniana glares at him with disgust, but the beauty is all chained up like an animal, helpless against her horrible fate. Demonio and Pina finally enter the underground facility. Pina scratches her head, puzzled. She can't believe Maniana was captured by just some bandits, since Maniana is supposed to be a highly skilled warrior. Demonio then explains the deep reasons behind Maniana's capture. He reveals that it wasn't just some random bandits. It was the enemy faction's top-tier executives who set the trap. However, the twisted part is that the game's story writer is the real mastermind. Demonio goes on to explain that the main writer of Mamafin, Ujima, planned it that way, to have a strong mom like Maniana brought down by lowlife old geezers. He adds that the horned dog writer cares more about erotic scenes than keeping the story consistent. Meanwhile, deep in the dungeon, Mainiana remains trapped and helpless. Bound tightly, she can't use her magic. The villain explains it's because of the cursed choker around her neck. Once worn, it blocks magic and stops the wearer from strengthening their body. The one-eyed thug then starts torturing her with a stick that causes an intense sensation. Mainiana struggles to keep her composure, but the aphrodisiac effect is overwhelming. After several agonizing pokes, the thug declared it's time for some deep lessons to begin. Another bandit steps forward, and together they start discussing how they'll take advantage of the captive woman. They've been given free rein as long as she's left intact. The other bandit eagerly says he can't hold back any longer. He wants to go swimming in the wet mud. But the one-eyed leader cuts in, insisting he gets the first taste, and then moves closer to feel her soft plots. In a flashback, it's revealed that Mainiana always dreamed of being a strong mom who could shield her daughter from harm, all in honor of her late husband. Yet the Royal Knight's order was steeped in outdated beliefs, and because she was once a commoner, Mainiana faced harsh discrimination. Still, she pushed through every obstacle with sheer skill and determination. For her daughter's sake, she stood firm, no matter how humiliating the blows. She never relied on anyone or showed weakness, overcoming loneliness and pain on her own. Now, after all she's endured, it seems she's about to be violated by these unbearable lowlifes. As the gorilla grip tightens around her balloons, Mainiana sobs, apologizing for being a terrible mother to her beloved daughter Monica. But suddenly, in a blink, a sharp cut slashes through the thug's wrist, stopping him cold. Demonio steps out from the shadows, masked and fierce, catching Mariana and the thugs off guard. The bandits shout, demanding to know who he is, but before they can get an answer, Demonio spins into a devastating whirlwind attack. Screams fill the air as the bandits get caught in the destructive storm. The leader, however, manages to escape, clutching the aphrodisiac tightly. Demonio immediately gives chase. The thug tries to flee, but a swift strike to his leg sends him crashing to the ground. Looming over him, Demonio's presence is menacing as the desperate thug begs for mercy, insisting they've done nothing wrong. He explains that their higher-ups gave them free rein to do whatever they wanted with the woman. In panic, he hands the aphrodisiac over, pleading with Demonio to use it on Mariana and spare his life. For a brief moment, Demonio almost loses control, tempted to take the aphrodisiac. But he snaps back to reality and swiftly slices the thug clean in two with his blade. After which, he picks up the aphrodisiac, calls the bandit leader a scumbag, and fiercely demands what kind of monster he thinks he is, treating women like that. After the intense rescue, Mainiana sits down, exhausted, as Demonio carefully removes the cursed collar from her neck. Grateful, she quietly thanks her mysterious savior. Demonio checks if they've hurt her in any manner, and Mainiana assures him she's okay and that they didn't get to do anything to her. Upon hearing this, Demonio sighs with relief, saying that was one close call. Mainiana, with eyes filled with gratitude, then asks to know the name of her savior. But the masked hero explains his name is not worth mentioning and suggests they just say he's one man who's fallen head over heels for her and leave it at that. Mainiana blushes softly at the compliment. Demonio then picks her up, asks her to hold on tight, and together they begin escaping through the stone corridors. As they flee, Mainiana reflects on her past, wondering the last time someone went to such lengths to protect her. The emotional weight hits her as she realizes how long it's been since anyone cared this much. Later, they reach safety at a tent just outside the underground facility. Demonio explains it is his tent and suggests she lie down and take some rest, but Mainiana apologizes, saying her body feels so hot. Thinking to himself, the protagonist reasons Mariana should be safe now since he's fulfilled his mission with this rescue. So he decides he just needs to find the right opportunity to take his leave when she falls asleep. But then something unexpected happens. Mainiana suddenly balances her big twerk tank on Bro's face. This is as a result of the cursed collar's effects. Because of the devastating pheromones, Mainiana is about to go haywire on him. Demonio freezes in shock at the sight of the massive cheeks so close to his face. The situation grows increasingly intense as the magical effects take hold and Mainiana screams that she can't take it anymore. As she pins him down, Demonio panics, realizing this is the full power of Mama Mania, who's said to be one of the strongest characters in the game. Overwhelmed by freaky urges, Mainiana feels like she's losing her mind. She apologizes, saying she can't help it, explaining her body feels like it's on fire. She kisses him, and the royal rumble begins. All this time, Pina stays outside the tent, hearing intense clapping sounds coming from inside. The aftermath shows Demonio exhausted, thanking the Lord for burning his V-card. Just then, Pina enters the tent, asking if he's okay, but the protagonist is still in a mood of gratitude. Following day, inside the tent, Mariana and Demonio engage in another sheet rumble as Mariana confesses that it's even bigger than her late husband's. The young woman gasps, feeling his hard length reaching deep within her body. After 2 hours of intense passion, Mariana realizes this encounter has changed everything for her. She confesses that her body simply won't listen to her anymore. The young woman reflects on her difficult life. After her husband died, she had led a miserable existence. She reveals that not once did her 2-minute husband ever satisfy her. However, she confesses that this experience with Demonio has brought tears to her eyes. She describes it as the most intense love she has ever felt as an unknown wave of pleasure washes over her completely. Meanwhile, back at the 𝓜𝓘𝓛𝓕, Glenn, Demonio's father, returns to find Rosa in her lingerie, ready for action. But the man calmly apologizes to Rosa, explaining he is tired, then shuts the door in her face. This saddens Rosa, the fact that her so-called husband will never hold her. Walking down the corridor, Rosa suspects her husband has been with other women outside their home, while she is merely a second wife for show. Despite everything, Rosa maintains her loyalty to Glenn. She says she doesn't resent him because he saved her family. Even though she came from a poor noble family, they were very poor, but now they can survive thanks to their connection with the 𝓜𝓘𝓛 family. She remains grateful no matter how badly he treats her. However, Rosa admits that exhaustion sometimes catches up to her, since she is often isolated in the mansion while playing her role as Glenn's wife. But for some reason, Rosa has been feeling really happy lately. Something has changed in her world since Demonio started treating her nicely. Back at the tent, Mariana suddenly breaks down in tears of shame. She apologizes profusely to Demonio, claiming the aphrodisiac might have played a big part in her behavior. However, she blames herself for forcing a young man like him to do those nasty things with her and declares she would do anything to make amends. But inwardly, the protagonist admits that he enjoyed every bit of the action. If anything, he wants to express his gratitude to her. Demonio then asks her to raise her head and then boldly declares that whatever happened between them is merely an accident, so he's not bothered by it. But Mariana cries out, screaming that alone will not do. She points out that she already knew who he was, Demonio, the next head of the 𝓜𝓘𝓛 family. Embarrassed, she then confesses that she has a daughter the same age as him, yet she had done something terrible to someone as young as her daughter, and then asks Demonio if he hated her for practically violating him. However, the protagonist confidently insists that this is not true and claims he had a stellar time with her. Mariana is shocked by his response, but still she declares that what happened will continue to bother her and begs to make it up to him somehow. Demonio considers telling her not to bother, but suddenly Pina appears floating nearby and interrupts with a suggestion. The demon girl advises Demonio to ask for a favor, insisting that this will help ease the lustful woman's mind. Demonio finds the demon girl's advice sensible, and with that considers asking Mariana for a favor. Several days later, at the 𝓜𝓘𝓛𝓕, Demonio and Mariana arrive at a secluded training area, where Mariana confirms once again if Demonio's favor is to be trained by her, and the protagonist says yes. Thinking to himself, Demonio reflects on how, despite training hard on his own for the past 2 months, there is only so much he can learn alone and figures it would be best to learn from Mama Mania, whose swordsmanship and magic skills are exceptional. Mariana considers his request briefly and agrees, though she doubts this alone will be enough to make amends. Demonio thanks her, thrilled that she will be his master. However, Mariana points out that many high-ranking nobles have asked her to train them before, but she always refused and never took on a disciple. Then out of nowhere, an intense combat erupts between master and student. Mariana launches a devastating sword attack at Demonio, who barely dodges her lightning-fast strikes. With sword in hand, Mariana warns that she can only teach through actual combat, not careful tutelage, and asks again if he is sure he wants such a violent master. Upon hearing this, the protagonist recalls Mama Mania's battle mania side from the game. So with a determined grin, Demonio prepares for the intense training and confidently tells her to bring it on. The training begins with explosive combat between master and student. Mariana charges across the training grounds at incredible speed, and Demonio barely manages to keep up with her relentless assault. Her skills are truly remarkable, and the protagonist admits he didn't expect anything less from one of the 7 Magi. Suddenly, Mariana unleashes her lightning hammer technique. The devastating magical attack strikes with thunderous force, but Demonio manages to deflect the blow using his shadow spears. Mariana finds his skills quite impressive, noting how clever he is to use shadow spears instead of a lightning rod. This move prompts her to reflect on the 𝓜𝓘𝓛 family's legacy, recalling how they have produced highly skilled shadow users for generations. In the past, Mariana has always known Demonio as a noble who showed no mercy to commoners and the weak. His arrogance made many dislike him. However, 𝓜𝓘𝓛𝓕 also possessed impeccable magical skills. Despite being a genius, he was still a demon at heart. Back in the present, during the fight, Mariana notices something remarkable. She senses 𝓜𝓘𝓛𝓕's pure sincerity through his swordplay and feels his noble, unwavering will to grow stronger. She reflects on their previous encounter, recalling how 𝓜𝓘𝓛𝓕 had saved her the day before. This makes her question whether the rumors about him being a scoundrel are false. She also remembers the strafing moment they shared, and with a flushed face, embarrasses herself for recalling those memories. Seizing the moment while she is distracted, 𝓜𝓘𝓛𝓕 tosses 𝓜𝓘𝓛𝓕 at her. As the blade hits the ground, it immediately emits a precise shadow bind. Mariana recognizes the shadow bind technique as one commonly used by shadow users. She explains that it's effective for binding and using shadows to slow an opponent's movements. Confident, she believes it won't work on a high-level fighter like herself. Suddenly, Mariana finds herself unable to move. She gasps in shock as she realizes her right leg is stuck to the ground. At that moment, she understands 𝓜𝓘𝓛𝓕 had condensed the magical effect of the attack with precision. Mariana is amazed by his tactical brilliance, never expecting the young man to control magic with such accuracy. Without hesitation, 𝓜𝓘𝓛𝓕 launches a devastating attack straight at her, determined to make sure it touches his dear mama to his heart's content. Mariana stands there, acknowledging how skilled 𝓜𝓘𝓛𝓕 has become in controlling his magical powers. But Mariana suddenly unleashes a shield that deflects the incoming attack, causing a massive explosion. The force of the collision sends 𝓜𝓘𝓛𝓕 and his legendary sword stumbling to the ground. 𝓜𝓘𝓛𝓕 is impressed. It is just as he expected. He can never defeat a member of the Seven Magi. Meanwhile, Mariana inwardly praises his magical abilities, feeling as if she was bested by someone so young. She recognizes his talent is fearsome, and at such a young age he is already a force to be reckoned with. With that talent, she wonders how strong he will become under her training. She approaches him to help him stand and compliments his magical abilities as remarkable. However, she notes he still has much room for improvement and says it would be a shame not to polish those developing skills. But as she speaks, Mariana grows a bit flustered, wondering why she is getting butterflies in her stomach. Grinning mischievously, she declares she will train 𝓜𝓘𝓛𝓕 hard from now on and tells him to brace himself. However, she nervously admits they need to keep their disciple relationship secret from the Night Order, as reporting everything would be too much of a hassle. Following that, 𝓜𝓘𝓛𝓕 then awkwardly asks if there's any chance she could get pregnant from their steamy encounter, reminding her they did it without any proper preparations. Blushing furiously, Mariana jokingly suggests that if that were to happen, maybe he would have to take her as his wife. Then shyly, she says she's kidding since she's sure he wouldn't want an old hag like her. But 𝓜𝓘𝓛𝓕 suddenly grabs her hand, screaming with pleasure. Confused by his reaction, Mariana asks him not to make silly jokes like that. She casually tells him not to worry, explaining that she has already used contraceptive magic. Then, suddenly, she feels those raging urges again, and begins to wonder if the aphrodisiac has fully left her system yet. Back at the 𝓜𝓘𝓛𝓕 estate, the servants whispered about 𝓜𝓘𝓛𝓕's secret training with Mama Mania. They were not surprised that such a remarkable swordswoman would acknowledge 𝓜𝓘𝓛𝓕's talent, since they expected nothing less from Sir 𝓜𝓘𝓘𝓛𝓕. Meanwhile, in her room, Rosa overheard the whispers and felt a surge of jealousy when the maids mentioned 𝓜𝓘𝓛𝓕's master being incredibly beautiful. Next day, training commenced. 𝓜𝓘𝓛𝓕 tried to cast a ball of mystic energy while declaring inwardly that for the sake of his dear mamas, he would endure any rigorous training. But then, Mariana sensed that the magical current near his chest was slightly off. Reaching for his hand, she told him to try sensing her mana. She placed his hand on her trampoline chest to help him feel her mana, but suddenly became overwhelmed as powerful sensations coursed through her body. Afterwards, Mariana positioned herself close to 𝓜𝓘𝓛𝓕 for another intense training session, instructing him not to move. Smiling mischievously, she promised to make sure she thoroughly teaches him everything. An hour earlier, the two had been training in a rocky canyon area. Suddenly, 𝓜𝓘𝓛𝓕 found himself overwhelmed by mysterious sensations. Without holding back, he launched a devastating punch that shattered massive rocks around them. Standing confidently, he looked at the destruction he had caused with his newfound power, while Mariana commented that it looked like he finally got the hang of it. Approaching with a satisfied expression, Mariana says she expected no less of him. Smiling proudly, Mariana explains the technique is body enhancement magic done through magic, and then advises him to keep up with his fundamental training sessions. 𝓜𝓘𝓛𝓕 agrees with determination, saying yes, ma'am, to his beautiful master. After that, they engage in another sparring session, with 𝓜𝓘𝓛𝓕 thinking about how thorough and patient Mariana is with her teaching methods, despite her claim that she can only teach through violent means. During this sparring session, 𝓜𝓘𝓛𝓕 observes 𝓜𝓘𝓛𝓕's remarkable progress with shadow magic techniques. She has fought many shadow users before but has never seen anyone control their shadows so meticulously. Reflecting on his abilities, she realizes he is soaking up her knowledge of swordsmanship and body movement like a sponge. Smiling with appreciation, she acknowledges he is certainly stronger than she was at his age. But then she notices 𝓜𝓘𝓛𝓕 straining his core to keep up with her attacks, so she is forced to stop the training session. She then positions herself behind 𝓜𝓘𝓛𝓕 and instructs him to put force into his core while she channels her mana into him to help his body get accustomed to highly dense mana. Grabbing his core tightly, 𝓜𝓘𝓛𝓕 warns that this is a perilous method, but the fastest way to increase his mana reserves significantly. With her double-pointed missiles pressed against his back, she also cautions that it might be a bit too stimulating for someone his age. Nervously, 𝓜𝓘𝓛𝓕 admits her chest is indeed incredibly stimulating and overwhelming. 𝓜𝓘𝓛𝓕 then teases him, asking if he's unable to move just because of some slight stimulation, and then warns that some enemies might use their charms to make him lower his guard. Moving her hand gently towards his junks, 𝓜𝓘𝓛𝓕 shyly admits she's training him properly and that he needs to stay focused. Desperately trying to maintain his composure, 𝓜𝓘𝓛𝓕 struggles with the intense sensations but knows he must stay rational during these training sessions. So he tries hard to clear his mind of any cultured thoughts. Meanwhile, 𝓜𝓘𝓛𝓕 feels her body tingling with desire from being so close to 𝓜𝓘𝓛𝓕. Both of them breathe heavily as the magical training reaches its peak intensity. Nearby, Pina floats silently, wondering what kind of training these two are even doing together. Later, back at the 𝓜𝓘𝓛𝓕 estate, 𝓜𝓘𝓘𝓕 reflects on recent events with satisfaction. He believes he has successfully avoided the bad ending for Mama 𝓜𝓘𝓛𝓕. However, he admits he can't afford to be too optimistic about the situation. Lost in thought, 𝓜𝓘𝓘𝓕 acknowledges that the only thing he can do now is focus on getting stronger through training, since there is no telling how the plot might deviate from the original game. While having lunch, 𝓜𝓘𝓛𝓕 asks if 𝓜𝓘𝓘𝓕 is even listening to her. Caught off guard, 𝓜𝓘𝓘𝓕 suddenly calls her Mama 𝓜𝓘𝓛𝓕 and quickly apologizes. Panicking, he tries desperately to explain that he meant to say Master 𝓜𝓘𝓛𝓕 properly, but accidentally lets the word Mama slip out during his flustered explanation. However, 𝓜𝓘𝓛𝓕 pats his head gently, saying she doesn't mind being called Mama. Laughing warmly, she adds that if anything, she would love to have such a brilliant son like him. Meanwhile, outside the dining room, Rosa has been quietly eavesdropping on their conversation. She feels emotional, reminded that she was supposed to be 𝓜𝓘𝓛𝓕's real mama. The next day, after long sweat-drenched hours at the training grounds, 𝓜𝓘𝓘𝓕 returns home, feeling excited from such a fulfilling session. Suddenly, Rosa appears, looking absolutely stunning in her elegant dress. She mentions that it seems like he's really putting his back into training. Smiling warmly, Rosa notes that the soldiers told her he's been learning powerful spells left, and right to which 𝓜𝓘𝓘𝓕 credits it all to the splendid tutelage of his master. Rosa smiles hearing this, but deep down, she's dying of jealousy. Suddenly, she goes crazy, telling 𝓜𝓘𝓘𝓕 to go take a shower. Like a beast, she yanks off his clothes, warning him he'll catch a cold if he stays sweaty like that. Shocked, 𝓜𝓘𝓘𝓕 stammers, but with no clothes to cover his bare skin, he frantically flees down the hallway, wondering what the heck is happening. Meanwhile, Rosa grabs his torn clothes and sniffs them. She recognizes the disgusting smell as 𝓜𝓘𝓘𝓕's. However, she also detects another presence, a female scent, and concludes it belongs to a mature tramp. Meanwhile, 𝓜𝓘𝓘𝓕 is in the bathtub, enjoying his lonely time with Pina, his invisible demon ghost. Suddenly, the bathroom door opens and someone enters. It's Rosa, wearing just a short towel, asking if she can rub his back. As they share the bath, Rosa declares she is his true mama after all. Embracing him in the warm water, she promises to take care of everything. Overwhelmed, 𝓜𝓘𝓘𝓕 gasps as the moment grows incredibly intense. Throughout the following weeks, Rosa and 𝓜𝓘𝓛𝓕 competed for 𝓜𝓘𝓘𝓕's attention with increasingly intense training methods. As the seasons passed, their training continued through different weather conditions. 𝓜𝓘𝓘𝓕 faced various magical creatures and monsters during his combat sessions, and these intense battles pushed him to grow stronger under his master's guidance. After another successful training session, 𝓜𝓘𝓛𝓕 smiled with satisfaction at his progress. Finally, the day came. 𝓜𝓘𝓘𝓕 announced to his mamas that he was heading out for his first day at the academy. Both Rosa and 𝓜𝓘𝓕 wished him well as he prepared to leave. Rosa told him to take care of himself, while 𝓜𝓘𝓕 reminded him not to go overboard at the academy. Walking toward the carriage, 𝓜𝓘𝓘𝓕 felt emotional about leaving his beloved mamas behind. He admitted he would miss them dearly during his time away. However, he knew this was necessary for his growth. Sitting in his carriage, 𝓜𝓘𝓛𝓕 realized it was finally time for the main story. The plot where his beloved mamas would be treated like dirt was about to begin. Smiling with fierce determination, he declared he would turn everything on its head. On the horizon, the magnificent 𝓜𝓘𝓛𝓕 Magic Academy comes into view. This massive castle stands proudly as one of the best training institutions in the country. 𝓜𝓘𝓛𝓕, along with other students, gathers in the hall for the entrance ceremony as an instructor welcomes them warmly, congratulating everyone on their enrollment. Afterwards, a teacher informs the students about the entrance exams they must take to determine their classes. The exams begin with a written test as students frantically scribble answers while 𝓜𝓘𝓛𝓕 sits calmly, working through his exam with confidence. Next is the magic appraisal, and 𝓜𝓘𝓛𝓕 displays his impressive magical abilities by completely shattering the appraisal crystal. During the swordsmanship practicals, 𝓜𝓘𝓛𝓕 demolishes his opponents with ease. Following that, the magical practicals commence with devastating force as one student unleashes an intermediate fire spell called Blaze Arrow at 𝓜𝓘𝓛𝓕. However, 𝓜𝓘𝓛𝓕 counters by casting a powerful advanced black magic spell known as Black Fang, forcing the student to crumble and accept defeat, leaving observers stunned. Later, the results are posted publicly for everyone to see. The announcement board shows first place belongs to none other than 𝓜𝓘𝓛𝓕 Traidor. Students whisper among themselves, commenting that he obviously knew he'd ace the entrance exams with his impressive abilities. Excited beyond belief, 𝓜𝓘𝓛𝓕 celebrates his achievement by magically FaceTiming his hot moms to inform them of his first-place finish, and both are impressed. After the FaceTime, 𝓜𝓘𝓕 appears floating nearby and asks why he came to this particular place. 𝓜𝓘𝓛𝓕 responds that he needs to give everything his best effort now. After all, the main story of 𝓜𝓘𝓛𝓕 is finally about to begin for real. While strolling through the school compound that same day, 𝓜𝓘𝓛𝓕 overhears a student crying bitterly about being placed in Class D, while his friends try to console him. When Pina asks 𝓜𝓘𝓛𝓕 what the class system is about, 𝓜𝓘𝓛𝓕 explains that it's a hierarchy system where students are divided into different classes from A to E based on their grades and overall academy performance. He adds that upper classes receive various preferential treatments and benefits, while lower classes are forced to study in much poorer environments and conditions. However, 𝓜𝓘𝓛𝓕 points out that students can change classes depending on their performance. Reflecting on the original game, 𝓜𝓘𝓛𝓕 recalls that 𝓜𝓘𝓛𝓕 was always in A class, completely unrivaled as the #1 ranked student during his first year at the academy. Walking across the academy courtyard, Pina comments that 𝓜𝓘𝓛𝓕 went pretty easy on the other students during the earlier exams. 𝓜𝓘𝓛𝓕 agrees, saying that just like in the original game, it's better to keep things low-key and appear as just an average elite student. Also, he doesn't want to attract any unwanted attention unnecessarily. It's been exactly 1 year since he reincarnated into this body, 𝓜𝓘𝓛𝓕 reflects thoughtfully. After his intense and diligent training, he feels the dormant talents within his reincarnated body have finally fully awakened. Still, he knows he needs much more power if he wants to completely change the fate of this game. Most importantly, he reflects grimly, there's still that guy, the hero of the game, whose very existence bothers him. Back at the academy, 2 students chat about recent events. This year, they note, a commoner actually enrolled in their prestigious institution. The existence of that guy has everyone talking and wondering what will happen next. One student comments that the guy was there with him during the exam and seemed like bad news from the very start. Another student dismisses the concern, saying the commoner is only E-class and can't even use basic magic spells. However, there's no denying he has monstrously good sword skills, but that's about all he offers. Meanwhile, in the academy's main office, an elegant woman in revealing attire notes there are lots of particularly amusing students this year. This is Headmistress Sagaro of 𝓜𝓘𝓛𝓕 Magic Academy, and she's concerned about the presence of 2 remarkable students who gained admission. Reviewing the files on her desk, she points out that the first is the demon of the Traidor family, whose results are impeccable, while the other is a commoner who can't use magic. The headmistress hints that these 2 students might cause trouble for the head teacher. However, the head teacher, standing in front of her, states it won't be a problem. She pulls out a whip, promising to drill the academy's code into them properly and ensure they become completely obedient to her authority. The headmistress, named Gloria with a cup size of 1,000, declares she'll take personal responsibility for disciplining both the troublemaking kid and the exceptional maverick, making them submit entirely to her will. Meanwhile, in the IA classroom, 𝓜𝓘𝓛𝓕 sits at the back with his arms crossed as his classmates gossip about him. They whisper that the last thing they want is to anger this person. Some students comment that his face seems absolutely terrifying, while 𝓜𝓘𝓛𝓕 surveys the room with cold calculation. 𝓜𝓘𝓛𝓕 observes everything going on and teases that he's getting quite the attention from his classmates. Suddenly, two gorgeous beauties approach 𝓜𝓘𝓕. The blonde girl responds enthusiastically that she's honored to be in the same class as him, and the other reveals she's been a long-time fan of his abilities. The blonde then suggests they all have a magic lesson together after school. But 𝓜𝓘𝓕𝓕, like a true alpha male, ignores them completely with a blank expression, shocking even 𝓜𝓘𝓛𝓕. Just then, the classroom falls silent as an intimidating presence enters. A whip slashes at the blackboard while a commanding voice orders everyone to keep it down. Gloria makes a dramatic entrance with overwhelming presence and introduces herself as their homeroom teacher. As the students panic at the sight of the intimidating teacher, 𝓜𝓘𝓕𝓕 freezes in shock as he recognizes her as Mama Gloria from the game. It is revealed that Gloria is known for being stern and having an incredibly scary demeanor. She's an elite fighter and a Knight Order member, despite being an academy professor. Reflecting on the original game, 𝓜𝓘𝓕𝓕 recalls that Gloria was an incredibly popular mama with devoted fans. However, she didn't appear much in the main storyline since she wasn't the homeroom teacher for the protagonist's class. Just then, Gloria addresses the class, warning the students that it's imperative to have talent in magic, as the Class A nobles are known for their abilities. She adds with firm authority that there's no point in developing magical talent without serious effort. She unleashes a tiny amount of magical power while emphasizing that, as the homeroom teacher, she will not accept any arrogance. Under her watch, she says the weak will grow stronger through dedication, and the strong will aim for even greater heights. With a commanding tone, she asks if her message has been received. But the students sit in stunned silence, unable to respond, completely overwhelmed by her presence. Thinking, Gloria notes with satisfaction that her students are still amateurs and that the Class A nobility are nothing to write home about. But suddenly, she notices a gaze and realizes a student is looking at her with unusual boldness. It's 𝓜𝓘𝓕𝓕, staring intensely at his formidable new teacher. Gloria immediately recognizes 𝓜𝓘𝓕𝓕 and is surprised at how his eyes are ogling her body. As a veteran professor, Gloria immediately recognizes that look as one of clear disrespect, like someone looking down on their instructor. Her anger rises, and she vows to discipline 𝓜𝓘𝓕𝓕. Meanwhile, 𝓜𝓘𝓕𝓕 feels excited, knowing this means he'll get to see more of his mama. During lunch, while heading to the cafeteria, 𝓜𝓘𝓕 asks curiously if 𝓜𝓘𝓕𝓕 has experienced everything the Academy offers in his previous life. 𝓜𝓘𝓕𝓕 answers honestly that there's still much he doesn't know about the Academy. He admits he only visited the places specifically mentioned in the original game's storyline. Upon reaching the cafeteria, 𝓜𝓘𝓕𝓕 suddenly spots two girls whose moms he recognizes from the game. The black-haired one is Sakura, and the blonde is Tina. Reflecting, 𝓜𝓘𝓕𝓕 recalls that both girls are conquerable heroines in the original game. Though they had some romantic scenes in the story, 𝓜𝓘𝓕𝓕 skipped those moments entirely because his interests lie with his cougar mummies. Suddenly, someone's food is thrown away. Chaos erupts in the cafeteria as students start shouting at a girl. One dude yells that a lowly E-rank student like her shouldn't eat shamelessly in the middle of the dining area. Another aggressively demands that a luggard like her should huddle in a corner and eat by herself like the outcast she is. 𝓜𝓘𝓕𝓕 immediately recognizes the girl being criticized. She's Rebecca, one of the main heroines from the original Manga game. As the students continue their harsh criticism, Rei, the game's hero, steps up to defend her, saying he disapproves of wasting food. The moment 𝓜𝓘𝓕𝓕 sees Rei, his anger boils at the sight of the 𝓜𝓘𝓛𝓕 protagonist. 𝓜𝓘𝓕 wonders curiously what's so special about this particular student. So 𝓜𝓘𝓕𝓕 informs her that Rei is the protagonist of the original game. While speaking, his anger flares as he tells 𝓜𝓘𝓕 that Rei is also a fearsome 𝓜𝓘𝓛 lover. Back to the heated confrontation, the bullies tell Rei not to get so worked up, since he's just a lowly E-class student. One of them delivers a harsh blow, calling Rei a no-talent peasant with no magic, and then says he has no right to defy nobles like them. It is revealed that at the story's start, Rei was a laggard who couldn't use any magic and relied solely on swordsmanship. But then during this confrontation, Rei confidently vows to climb to the top of the academy, proving that even laggards can surpass geniuses with enough effort. Upon hearing Rei's confident speech, 𝓜𝓘𝓕𝓕 recalls that in the game, Rei awakens his magic later on. As a matter of fact, Rei learns ancient magic reserved only for the chosen protagonist. While thinking about this, 𝓜𝓘𝓕𝓕 also recalls that in the game, he loses to Rei and eventually dies a miserable death. 𝓜𝓘𝓕𝓕 reflects seriously on the terrible end that awaits him. He knows that if he wants to avoid the death route permanently, it's best to avoid antagonizing Ray and instead build amicable relationships from the very beginning. But suddenly, his resolve wavers as internal conflict grips him. He admits almost desperately that he can't bring himself to forgive the protagonist's behavior. In a tragic flashback, he recalls lonely times in his past life playing Mamafin, when he longed to spend quality moments with Mama Mania. The game would offer different relationship paths, either staying with her until dawn or parting ways to return to the dormitory, and he would always choose to stay until dawn. However, Ray would decide against staying longer, reasoning he might get in trouble if it became too late and would rather hurry back to his room. This decision infuriates the protagonist, driving him mad as he slams his desk in frustration. Meanwhile, back to the present confrontation, Ray quickly deals with the bullies with a few punches, forcing them to flee while vowing revenge. An hour later in class, Gloria asks the students if anyone knows the strange incantation spell she just used. Before anyone can answer, Demonio quickly shoots up his hand, frustrating Gloria. Demonio then answers the question correctly, shocking the rest of the class. When Gloria announces it's time for the next challenging problem, Demonio answers again before anyone else can. For some reason, Gloria feels pissed at how diligently Demonio answers her questions. Thinking to herself, she wonders what his endgame could be, unaware that deep down, Bro is just genuinely excited by her juicy lessons. Later, after class ends, the protagonist stays close to the window, thinking about how the last thing he wants is to be a troublemaking student hated by everyone. The problem is, Demonio is a villain and is supposed to be hated, according to the original game. Suddenly, someone shouts angrily outside the window. Looking down, Demonio spots two girls being bullied aggressively and recognizes them as Carol and Mina, his classmates. The leader of the bullies, Greg, shouts threats at the girls for spilling coffee on their shoes. Even though Carol and Mina have apologized countless times, the nuisances refuse to relent. Greg grabs Mina by the chin, threatening that she'll be kicked out of the academy if she tries to defy him. Meanwhile, Demonio stays at the window, observing the scene. Pina then asks in shock if he plans to save the girls. Demonio responds positively, saying they are his classmates after all. Surprised, Pina jokingly asks if he ever saves anyone besides mature MILFs. Demonio finds the question inappropriate. In truth, Demonio has no interest in the young girls of the game, but he decides to jump down from the window, resolving to save the girls just to make his mamas proud. Demonio lands with a terrifying presence that shocks everyone nearby. The girls being bullied recognize him immediately. The bullies also identify him fearfully as the student who placed first in the first year, and as the notorious demon of the Trador family lineage. However, Greg tells his boys to chill, assuring them that Demonio might be a genius, but he is still a first year. In the original game storyline, Demonio beat anyone who challenged him to a pulp, including upperclassmen who tried to intimidate him. He built quite the notorious reputation for himself, and students learned to fear him. However, as Demonio approaches the scene, he refuses to follow the path of the game. Instead of throwing fists, he chooses to bow his head respectfully to Greg, pleading for the girls to be let free and suggesting he will compensate in their place. The bullied girls are shocked to see this unexpected side of Demonio, while Greg laughs mockingly and calls him a complete wimp. Greg tells him that this kind of submissive behavior will earn him lots of points from them. As Greg speaks trash about him, Demonio reasons that since he has no intention of being a conceited villain, it is best to lower his head as much as it takes. Suddenly, a kick flies from nowhere. Greg smashes Demonio's chest with the blow, then continues to pound his face with relentless strikes, while thinking that if he beats up the top first-year student, he might gain some fame around campus. After the intense beating, Greg says he'll let Demonio off the hook just this once. Then the meathead makes a fatal mistake. He warns Demonio to behave himself and go back to sucking his mummy's milk bag. That's the breaking point. Demonio snaps. He grabs Greg by the collar and lifts him into the air. Demonio calls him a scumbag and warns him never to speak about his mummy milker again. In a flashback, Demonio remembers the peaceful moments he shared with Rosa, sleeping quietly together. Back in the present, Demonio angrily throws Greg against the wall, warning him to respect maternal figures properly. Greg crashes hard, looking completely beaten. Standing over him with menace, Demonio declares that Mama's melons are sacred and warns Greg never to speak such filthy things about them again. Following that, Greg's friends help carry him away, promising revenge. With the bullies gone, Mina and Caro rush over, hugging Demonio and thanking him. After Greg, the powerhouse of the third year, gets beaten blue and black by Demonio, rumors spread. Some say Demonio snapped from frustration and went on a violent rampage. Others call him a scoundrel, accusing him of attacking multiple students without provocation. Meanwhile, Mina and Caro tell conflicting stories about how cool 𝓜𝓘𝓛𝓕 was and how he saved them. The rumors create uncertainty about what really happened. Even teachers discuss whether this mysterious boy plans to take complete control of the academy. With everything going on, Gloria summons 𝓜𝓘𝓛𝓕 to her office to discuss his recent behavior. Despite trying to avoid such trouble, 𝓜𝓘𝓛𝓕 finds himself labeled a troublemaker and wonders if this is the unbendable fate written into the game's storyline. Gloria scolds him with obvious disappointment, saying he has finally shown his true colors, and just as she had suspected, he is an incorrigible troublemaker. However, the hot teacher explains that Carol and Mina have filled her in on what really happened. She acknowledges that 𝓜𝓘𝓛𝓕 saved the girls from being bullied by senior students, noting that his actions were a form of self-defense. Still, she says she cannot simply dismiss it, as it would set a bad example for other students. As punishment, she announces he will have to run multiple laps around the training field. 𝓜𝓘𝓛𝓕 then apologizes and promises to be more careful, accepting the punishment. Gloria smiles, recognizing that 𝓜𝓘𝓛𝓕 is an honest fellow and admits she may have been mistaken about his true nature. She pats his head, saying she knows he might be a troubled student but definitely not a rogue. Gloria's unexpected kindness triggers a flashback for the protagonist. He remembers how, even in the game, most professors treated 𝓜𝓘𝓛𝓕 like a ticking time bomb, yet Gloria stood apart. She treated him like a normal student, showing respect despite his reputation. Though strict, Gloria was also kind and became the best professor 𝓜𝓘𝓛𝓕 ever had. This memory strengthens 𝓜𝓘𝓛𝓕's resolve. It's one of the many reasons he vows never to let sweet mommy Gloria die in the game. After a month into the school year, students gather in front of a dungeon for an exploration exercise supervised by Gloria. Before entering, Gloria warns everyone not to let their guards down. The dungeon exploration is a required extracurricular activity for first-year students, but voluntary for upperclassmen. Naturally, no students from the higher classes participate, leaving 𝓜𝓘𝓛𝓕 as the sole noble among the entrants. Gloria expresses concern, asking 𝓜𝓘𝓛𝓕 if he's comfortable entering the dungeon alone without a group, and 𝓜𝓘𝓛𝓕 assures her he doesn't mind. 𝓜𝓘𝓛𝓕 yawns, thinking the only reason he joined this extracurricular activity was because, in the original game, Gloria dies in this very dungeon. Inside, Ray, the lolly-loving hero, and his team of lollies work together to take down a low-level golem, while 𝓜𝓘𝓛𝓕 single-handedly fends off attacking monsters. At night, everyone gathers around a fire inside the dungeon. One girl asks Gloria if she has given birth. In response, Gloria takes out her necklace and shows the students a picture of her daughter, 𝓜𝓘𝓛. She sadly explains that because of her job, she rarely gets to go home to see 𝓜𝓜𝓛. She admits to letting the servants take care of her daughter while neglecting her duties as a mother. However, her mood brightens as she reveals plans to take many days off to spend time with 𝓜𝓜𝓛 once the dungeon exploration is complete. 𝓜𝓘𝓛𝓕, however, already knows that in the game Gloria doesn't survive past this dungeon. In the game, the leaders of an enemy organization launch an attack on the dungeon with the intent of capturing the mammoth and heroines and holding them hostage. As the students come under assault, Gloria courageously risks her life to protect them but dies in the process. Back in the past, the protagonist would cry at this tragic event, especially when he sees 𝓜𝓜𝓛𝓕 bawling her eyes out in front of her mother's coffin during the funeral scene. Now, as 𝓜𝓘𝓛𝓕, the protagonist is determined to save Gloria by dismantling the traps set by the enemies. He has already devised a way to read the enemies' movements and plans to let the original plot play out to some degree to lure them into a trap. After the dungeon exploration exercise the next day, everyone heads to the bathroom to take a bath. But then 𝓜𝓘𝓛𝓕 remembers that in the game, an embarrassing event occurs at that moment. The bathroom walls collapse, exposing the girls' baths to full view. With this in mind, 𝓜𝓘𝓛𝓕 flees from the bathroom as he wants to avoid seeing the unclad bodies of lowlies at all costs. Seeing the mushy plots of young girls makes his stomach churn. All he wants is to see the hot body of the game moms. After running for a while, 𝓜𝓘𝓛𝓕 spots a spring with no one inside and decides to have his own bath there. He takes off his clothes and relaxes in the water. Suddenly, he notices the banging figure of a female. Though the view is a bit hazy, as it clears slightly, he realizes in shock that the woman with the banging body is none other than Gloria. Embarrassed, Gloria tries to cover her exposed curves with her hands while 𝓜𝓘𝓛𝓕 panics and blurts out an apology. When Gloria shyly asks why he came to the spring, 𝓜𝓘𝓛𝓕 replies that he was forced there for a reason and had no idea she was bathing. Gloria says it's fine, and she understands it was an accident. She claims that as a veteran professor, having a boy see her like this won't faze her one bit. 𝓜𝓘𝓛𝓕 finds her cute, knowing she's just saying this to play it cool despite being very embarrassed. Gloria then shifts into self-deprecating mode, talking about how her body used to be toned and her abs ripped, unlike how it is now. However, 𝓜𝓘𝓛𝓕 continues to stare at her intensely, aware that Gloria is making excuses because she's worried about being out of shape. Gloria goes on, saying she knows how her students see her and that showing her body might only bore them. She adds that they probably prefer looking at younger girls rather than an old hag like her. At that moment, 𝓜𝓘𝓛𝓕 has heard enough. Ignoring that his dumbbell is exposed, he walks over to Gloria and tells her she's a wonderful teacher with more charm than any baddie could ever have. 𝓜𝓘𝓛𝓕 goes wild as he grabs her by the shoulders and declares he's always wanted to see her without clothes. Gloria feels shocked, confused, and flustered all at once. Embarrassed, she quietly asks what he's saying. Before 𝓜𝓘𝓛𝓕 can reply, she yells at him, calling him an idiot and warns him not to lust after his teacher. Deep within the dungeon's lower floors, a mysterious cloaked figure from the enemy base senses a powerful mana presence. The masked assassin begins to suspect that the academy might have caught up with him. He wonders if the person who once freed Manga could be responsible for the mana he's detecting. Without hesitation, the assassin casts a magical circle, intending to adjust his plans. Suddenly, a massive roar echoes through the dungeon, shaking the walls and startling everyone nearby. A terrified student points toward the source of danger, a monstrous hydra charging at them. Gloria rushes forward to protect her students before the beast can attack. She's shocked by the creature's presence, questioning why such a high-level monster would appear in a low-level academy-managed dungeon. As the hydra strikes, most students flee, but Ray steps forward, preparing to face the threat head-on. Ray charges at the hydra with fierce determination. He leaps high and strikes one of the monster's heads, but his attack proves as useless as his face. The hydra's skin is unbelievably tough, and Ray's weak weapon stands no chance. Suddenly, a massive ball of fire collides with one of the hydra's heads, causing a huge explosion. The attack comes from Gloria, who immediately yells at the hero to stop his useless assault. She warns him that the students don't stand a chance against such a beast. Gloria then asks the other students if they still remember the emergency manual and orders everyone to evacuate the dungeon immediately. Ray tries to protest, saying he can help, but Gloria warns him sharply not to make her repeat herself. With a fiery blast and her massive sword in hand, Gloria commands Ray to leave the beast to her and get out of the dungeon immediately. Just then, 𝓜𝓘𝓛𝓕, who had been sleeping, runs as fast as he can to protect Gloria. Originally, the Hydra attack was supposed to happen on the second day, so it comes as a shock to 𝓜𝓘𝓛𝓕, who has no idea what is happening. Delusional Ray, realizing he is only a deadweight, decides to leave the dungeon, believing the teacher will handle the threat. He helps a scared girl escape, assuring her that Gloria will take care of everything. According to the game's story, since the hero has not awakened his magic, he stands no chance against the Hydra. Gloria was supposed to put her life on the line and die, while the hero and the rest of the students survive. In other words, she was treated as a sub-character used to spice up the story, while the hero only awakens his true powers after her death. This infuriates 𝓜𝓘𝓛𝓕, who feels the hero should have awakened his power before Gloria's demise. With her giant blade in hand, Gloria fought fiercely against the Hydra, but fatigue was setting in. Her attacks barely scratched the beast, thanks to its tough scales. She managed to seal off the dungeon's exit with heavy stones, deciding to hold the monster at bay to buy her students time to escape. Suddenly, the Hydra struck again, slamming Gloria against the wall. She collapsed, injured and gasping. Her only thought was whether her students had made it out safely. Her gaze fell upon her necklace lying on the ground, the picture of her daughter 𝓜𝓘𝓛𝓕 catching her eye. Seeing 𝓜𝓘𝓛𝓕's image at this desperate moment stirred memories of the past. Gloria had been forced into a marriage arranged by their parents with a man she did not love. When her husband's family business collapsed, he fled the country, leaving Gloria and 𝓜𝓘𝓛𝓕 burdened with a heavy debt. The academy took over the debt, and to repay the favor, Gloria was forced to work endlessly. Even though it had started out as a struggle, Gloria found her role as a professor fulfilling. Her tight schedule left little time for 𝓜𝓘𝓛𝓕, which caused the little girl great pain. Now lying injured on the dungeon floor, Gloria wished she had spent more time with 𝓜𝓘𝓛𝓕 and praised her more. Tears streaming down her face, she longed to have watched her daughter grow. As she cried bitterly, the monstrous Hydra prepared to launch a final attack. Suddenly, it froze in place. 𝓜𝓘𝓛𝓕 had restrained the beast with his high-level dark magic, the prison of darkness. Gloria stared in shock as 𝓜𝓘𝓛𝓕 stepped forward. With fierce determination on his face, he assured her that he would never let her die and promised to protect her at all costs. Will 𝓜𝓘𝓛𝓕 be able to save Gloria from her terrible destined fate? Comment, "I need a mummy milker," if you're hyped to see what happens next in part 2. If you enjoyed this video, drop a thumbs up and don't forget to subscribe for more awesome content. Thanks for watching, as always.